Good evening, Inspilled Glimmers, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we're talking about the big topic. Set championships are just around the corner. We just had two DLCs, the meta's in shambles. We need to know what to play, what are the good matchups, what are the bad matchups, and basically how to prepare for this thing. So, Alexandru, thanks for being with us tonight. Hopefully, we're back in studio soon, but
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, we'll do what we have for now.
there were some health issues and whatnot. Like we're just hoping for the best as of now. We still have some videos in the back pocket for like the future. We just have to do some commentary, and we'll be ready to send them your way.
Yeah, definitely. So for those wondering where the gameplay is, it's coming. Don't worry. We're working on that. Now, Alexandru, as I was saying, um, set championships are coming. We have like two of our locals out of the four that are this weekend. So we've been preparing for the past few weeks. Um, how do you envision it? What do you expect to see? How do you prepare?
Yes. So following both DLCs that we had a couple weeks ago, so Las Vegas and Birmingham, we saw some metagame shakeup. Uh, I will probably dive right away into what shook the metagame the most. Is the return of Green Steel. We all thought that Green Steel was dead and buried with the heavy errata on Bucky, rest his heart. Um, but some, let's say, courageous players such as Zansaid, Edmund Chu, myself, decided to herald Green Steel, various versions of Green Steel, in the various side events and in the main event of the DLC Las Vegas, putting the deck right back on the map. So right now we should see a good list. A good list. Probably the probably the benchmark list for the deck being.
Made top three of the top four spots. It's an okay list, I guess.
Yeah, and right now we're seeing the version that Zan decided to pilot. Again, I have to say, I said it in the last video, but like Zan said, uh, he's just like a class act. He's the epitome of the Lorcana player. He is, in my eyes, probably one of the best there is right now. If I had to have a pick for like a Hall of Fame or something, I said exactly the same thing in the last video. He would be my top spot. Infinite amount of love, infinite amount of admiration for the guy. He's just like he he even taught us a master class during the finals with the deck. He played masterfully. That game one of the finals was just a thing of beauty. But I'll I'll let the past be the past. Now I'll
For
be
anyone wanting to hear Alexandru more about this deck, just watch last week's video. I'll put it in the info card right above.
yeah. I talked about it like in great detail. Also, I'm really like very passionate about this deck because it's probably the archetype that's most dear to my heart. Not exactly that permutation, but still, it's green steel, and that's how I roll. Um, so here,
So we were talking last week about Green Steel and what can defeat it given its strong showing in Vegas. Has anything showed up in the past 2 weeks? Is anything expected? How would you prepare to face Green Steel?
so I've been scouring the various sites for deck lists and everything. I've seen a rise in green steel in the top eights, top fours of various local events. And I have to say, I haven't seen anything that is dominantly beating the deck. I would say the main bad matchup of this deck is probably blue red, and even there, that deck is very well tailored compared to other mid range decks to be able to counter what blue red wants to be doing. It is very focused on the discard plan. You see sudden chill, you see hypnotize, you see Prince John, you see Pete that is not a discard but will still be able to prevent key actions such as be prepared, such as brawl that want it can take care of many actions that are geared towards removing your key players from the board and not letting you accomplish your game plan.
Oh,
So
definitely. Preventing that brawl on turn three, forcing them to quill, and then making them discard the one or two cards they have left and putting them in top deck mode is soul crushing for the blue player.
exactly, this is probably one of the best case scenarios where you're able to like you make them ramp with whatever they still have, and then you probably leave them so behind that they're not able to play on curve. This is probably the best case scenario for the deck. This is how you are trying to beat blue red in general. uh,
And contrarily to blue steel, they can't refill with whole new world or anything. They have to rely on Harem. They have to rely on those popsicle.
yeah,
So
this is kind of the intricacy of this current meta. Blue steel is almost nowhere to be seen except some like really fervent adepts of the deck that are still playing it. I know that Jonathan Lamb was still piloting it in Las Vegas. He finished in the top 8 if I remember correctly. uh, but it's not a big showing of the deck. Everybody has switched to blue red now that it is doing all the same things as blue steel was doing, except a little better, except for the part of just being super explosive out of the whole new world. So this is how Zan and the various people on the discard version of Emerald Steel decide to build a deck to attack the particular juggernaut of the format. So I would say this is the main weakness of the deck because we've seen the deck tackle on various mid-range decks quite easily. I think it has a fairly fine Steel Song matchup. I think it has a very good Ruby Amethyst matchup. Uh, if I we have to talk about things like Emerald Amethyst, which is probably very similar to Ruby Amethyst, it still feels great because you kind of attack the few resources they have in hand, and they'll not be able to challenge your board with their board, which is probably their plan more than even Ruby Amethyst is. I feel the matchup is probably kind of evenish with Lemon Lime, since you're both discard decks, and well, Lemon Lime tries to be a bit more explosive and probably take the board with Under the Sea. That's their only way to really deal properly with your board, and that's where your Peats are really shining. If you want to see a good display of that matchup, I invite you to watch the game three of the quarterfinals. Sorry,
I
quarterfinals.
mean, the whole
Where,
quarterfinal, apart from game two, is a good showing of the matchup.
exactly, game two was probably a bit of a non-game, which tend to happen in TCGs. But you can see my teammate Kevin playing his top eight. We see every kind of quirk of the matchup. He's playing a super good game in game one against Green Steel, and then Green Steel playing a super good game in game three, really being able to bank on these beats and run away with the game that way. So,
Yeah.
so this is
I have
from
to say, though, one thing I have seen, because we're talking about how the Steel Song matchup is really good. I've seen a few Steel Song players upping their counts of Grab Your Sword because that card basically renders most of the deck like dead in the water. So there is tech in Steel Song that can make the matchup a little bit more even. It won't
Yeah,
make it a good matchup, but it makes it more of an even matchup.
I think I'll touch upon my opinion of Steel Song when we get to the deck,
Yeah.
because spoiler alert, is it's in my list of the decks that you might see a lot in your set championships. I'll touch upon probably the issues I see of taking your deck against Green Steel. But anyway, we can move along to the next deck.
Yep.
So
So, what do you think the best matchups, just before we move on, of Emerald Steels are?
I would say you're pretty happy to see someone playing Ruby Amethyst on the other side of the table. I know that I generally am with my version, and this version is still quite similar. The role players are still there, and the discard I think is even more egregious for them to deal with, since they're not able like to refuel if you attack their card draw that when it's still in their hand, it's very difficult for them to just get the ball rolling. So
Yeah, you can remove the early mim targets. You can attack their hand, as you said. Like it's a deck that can crumble on itself and like remove the Flynn pretty easily with the Storm Rage on from Diablo. Like it's
yeah, so you have a lot of good ways to just be able to contest everything they're doing. You're never probably never letting them score any points off their flins as well, because your deck just scales well, except if they get an early mim, meta mim fox. But even there, you can deal with it quite easily. So you're
yeah.
not too scared about what they're doing.
Let's move on to what was the big threat and still won the European match, Ruby Sapphire.
So Ruby Sapphire, the I still want to call it the boogeyman of the format. It's probably the still the best deck out there, just on the account of you know I just said that it has a good green steel matchup, and I think like it has like a lot of good matchups in the field. Even against their not so great matchups, they always have game. They always have like I played a bit of the deck while preparing for Toronto and for Vegas, uh, and the deck always plays so well from behind. Like you feel that you're probably getting buried in value or something, and then a timely Sisu, a timely be prepared, a few removals, or just a Tamatoa that gets the ball rolling again. It locks you back in the game and sometimes even just straight up wins the whole thing. So and the new pickups from this set were are the well in the version that we see here on screen for the from the winner of Birmingham, you have the hideaways, which are very nice tricks to address some of your weaknesses. By weakness, what I mean is probably uh, the locations. The locations, especially out of Ruby Amethyst, which is probably your worst matchup. I wouldn't say it's a bad matchup. I'd just say it's probably just your most difficult matchup. You have to
Of the big
really,
ones,
yeah.
because I
So
believe Hyper Aggro to be a much harder matchup for Ruby Sapphire than Ruby Amethyst can be.
the thing with like hyper aggro is it the showing is not very good. I was scouring the list yesterday while preparing for this video. I wanted to find a list that did well,
Mhm.
and I was not able to find one.
Oh no, exactly. Like you're not as likely to see it, but if you run into that one player who decided to run Hyper Aggro for the day, it might be the downfall of this list. Like it's really slow to start.
I agree. So I would say, except if you have someone actually teching against you or against the deck in general at your store championship, I think you should be cruising. You just have to really learn to how to pilot uh, the Ruby Amethyst matchup well. Also, like the Emerald Amethyst. Again, I see those decks as very similar. It's they're just trading most of their action and locations for characters, but this actually is a good thing for Ruby Sapphire, since you have a lot of good character removal.
Oh yeah.
It's really the locations that are an issue for you, and uh, since Emerald Amethyst generally don't really they don't really have any kind of location except if they want to be more spicy. You should be clear.
Yeah, and one keynote on this list specifically, if you're expecting to face some discard, if you're expecting to face some whole new worlds quite a lot, that single stone dragon can do a lot of work if it's dropped early, because you're gonna have your characters discarded, banished, whole new world, and being able to use them turn after turn as resources will often end up with you having 16, 18, 20 ink by the end of the game and just swarming them in value.
Yeah, it's a super good grind plan against any deck that, as I just said, wants to go for the grindy game, that isn't like super aggressive and not going for the win super early. So
One thing
uh,
I have to say though, this is a 61 card list, and in my testing, preparing for the set champs, I ended up removing the Mufasa out of it because it always felt like a win more card. By the time you're able and comfortable dropping that 8 drop, bringing back your 2 cards, and then doing all the fancy stuff of untapping your ink, you've already won the game. The opponent might not know it, but you've already won. So I dropped it back to 60, made my uninkable count one lower, and to be honest, I haven't missed it in the training. So
so you've just found out what we found out while we were preparing for Vegas. We found that Mufasa was a bad blue red card. We don't we didn't like it at all. I think if you want to be playing Mufasa, you have to go into some more cute decks such as Blue Steel and Blurple, which will take advantage of the Mufasa and of like the readying of the ink quite efficiently. Like you have a lot of things to do. You can play your whole new worlds. You can play more board presence. You can start doing some shenanigans in Blurple with Mims and Merlin.
bouncing
So
your bounces and bouncing and
yeah, exactly. So I think that's where Mufasa will be impressive and will be good, but like keep it out of blue red. It's not his home. So this is what I would consider to be probably the level zero deck to be like really competitive and to you know win games.
yep. Yeah, no, it's performed really well in our local testing here.
Well, not a lot of people are playing it, but the really strong players tend to be picking it up because you, it's really easy to showcase your skill with that deck.
Yeah.
So we can move right along to the next deck that I had lined up, which we mentioned twice by now. It's Ruby Amethyst, the the everlasting, undying warrior of the game. It's been there since set one, and it's still there, even though, in my opinion, it's not as great as it once was. It really gained so little from set number five. Here you can see a list that did well in Las Vegas. I think it's a top eight list, if I remember correctly. Uh,
Something like that. It says third here.
uh, well, I think it's third before the top cut, so probably going into day two.
No, I'm pretty sure that's the only deck that made it to the top 4 that wasn't green steel.
Probably. I kind of, it's kind of a haze because I was
Something
there.
like that.
Yeah,
it
because
it did well.
it did really well. So, but as I was saying, it picked up so little from set number five. We see here a playset of Elsa, the fifth spirit, and that's about it. Uh, this player decided not to run the library, a gift for Bell, which some lists try decide to try as a two of. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
a four of, and trading some quantity with the Queen's Castle. Uh, what I think is very interesting in this particular list we're seeing on screen is only one brawl, which this quantity is definitely something before a green steel world. Uh, I
Yeah.
think you have to go back onto like three or four of them to be able to deal with the Diablos, to deal with the Ursulas, and to deal with everything that's
I
very
mean, there's also
pesky.
two. Oh no, it's Titan Ambition. It's Became Undisputed. I thought it was Titan Ambition for a second. My bad.
No, no, it's Being Undisputed, which is very good to be dealing with ward creatures. Like the deck was running that back in the Bucky days to be
Hmm.
able to just get rid of Bucky. Now you need to get rid of Prince John. That's the ward character that's never gonna exert, never gonna quest. So this is your clean way to deal with it. But even there, I think the Bee King feels a lot worse than it
Yeah.
used to back in the day. Now the characters are much smaller in the deck. There are a little less Floodborns that run away with the game. It's more of an engine deck that has a lot of pieces, so you can like easily play around that Bee King Undisputed. So, but the deck is still strong. Like if you are a mid-range player, if you are an inveterated red purple player, you're gonna have success with such lists. It's strong, it's reliable, it's solid. You are still playing a four of Be Prepared, which even Ruby Sapphire is not doing anymore. They're splitting it with Sisus because they have to consider stuff like Lemon Lime. You don't have that consideration. You just don't really care and try and just slam that seven drop as early as possible when you're behind on board and you have to deal with a very full board. You have some really nice tech with Flynn Rider, Frenemy, that is very good technology against blue red. So, so I
Yeah.
would say,
Good text. Still a little sad to see that the. Oh, no, it's still there. The way we have it presented here mixes me up, but the CC was still there, just in two copies.
yeah. So we're
Because
having
that
what?
Flynn into CC was still a really good 2-3.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But still, sometimes you just want to go Flynn into Fox, and that's good enough
Oh yeah.
to gain some lore. What I have to say is probably this is a good way to attack a metagame filled with blue red. Like I just said in the blue red segment, the bad matchup is Ruby Amethyst. So the good matchup for Ruby Amethyst would be blue red. I think, though, you have to be very careful running into green steel. You see a kind of pattern of like rock, paper, scissors here with those top three, I want to say, decks that we see at the top of the metagame. So though I would say what makes it less of a predominant choice than green steel and blue red is probably some of the decks that are lower on our list are not great matchups for this deck. I would say Steel Song is not so easy. The pseudo mirror of Emerald Amethyst is a coin flip. It's very 50-50 because it feels so mirrory. And well, from our testing with Lemon Lime with the team, we felt that we could almost never lose Or
and I feel
how?
like their top end in Emerald Amethyst is so much better than in Ruby Amethyst with Ursula and with Clarabelle.
Yeah,
Like so much better than Lady Tremaine and Medusa.
yeah, because your top end really stops at 6, while theirs stops at 7, and those 7 drops are just really really impressive. Back in set 4 and at the beginning of set 5, sometimes you had a Sisu that wanted to go bigger and to be able to deal with boards, but it's a question of choice and of preference. If you want to include a one of Sisu, you have to be mindful of those uninkables, because sometimes it's one of the issues of the deck.
It runs
Sometimes,
fast.
oh yeah, and like you get stuck with hands full of uninkables. Like you have I don't know, two rabbits, a be prepared, a be king, and a Medusa, and you're just like, I'm so stuck right now.
Yeah, definitely trade those B Kings for Brawls if you're gonna get Sisus in there.
Yeah, that would be a good advice. So what I'm saying is, it almost feels like a meta call. If your meta is really really full of blue red, this is where you want to be choosing Ruby Amethyst as your choice deck.
Yeah, and Blue Red will be more vulnerable to B King and Tremaine than a lot of the smaller decks too. But
Mhm.
just one quick point before switching up. You said that there hasn't been a lot of new cards for Ruby Amethyst, but what a card is that Elsa? Like we'll see it shine in a few of the Amethyst deck, but in in actuality, that's probably one of the best cards of the set, in my opinion, to have come out. The tempo shift that it brings, the ability to tap an opponent, the rush evasive, like this card does work.
Yeah, and this is why I feel it's kind of underwhelming in here. It's You really take advantage of it in that Emerald Amethyst list. We'll be
Yeah,
talking about it as soon as we switch up to that list. But yes, it's quite a card.
let's jump into it right now. Actually,
Okay, we're changing
while
up
we're on the
your.
topic, let's
Yeah,
just.
yeah, for sure. So here we have the probably I'll call it the little brother of Ruby Amethyst, which is Emerald Amethyst. It's a list that is very much geared towards characters. You have very little actions. You only have a few "You're welcome" and a few friends on the other side. That's about it. You're not even playing the locations in that list. This is a list that was played by a content creator in the content creator set championship that they have prior to the actual set championships that are run into the stores. So, and I think it finished what, second or something.
It says
uh
top four here, so
okay, so top four is still a good performance. You see that the deck goes a bit more aggressive with stuff like Banzai. Instead of the Flint, you have to get these lore early, and Banzai is just very very effective. It's a 3/2. It's gonna trade with Mim Fox if you want to run it into it. It's going to gain a bunch of lore. You have very good technology in the one drop Clarabelle that is destroying items in blue red. You have very good ways to interact with Green Steel's hand in Ursula Deceiver. Anna is a very cool card, and one of the maybe underestimated cards of the whole list. You know what I'm gonna say? Lyle Roar Tiberius is like a hell of a card. Giving I don't know, like a Diablo Reckless feels like you have such an enormous brain. Like it
it's it's one of those cards that's either the most genius play you're gonna make in the night, or the worst turn you're gonna have had because you're gonna give like reckless to their Maui, and then they're just going to like bust your Lyle before it can even like lose them one lore because they have removal in hand. Like It's a really 50-50 card. I'll say high risk, high reward, but when it does work, it does work.
Oh, you can set it up so well with like the rest of your low curve. If they want to point removal at it, like even if they want to play something like grab your sword onto your board, it's
Oh
you
yeah, like
just
it's the card to play the turn you expect the CC or to be prepared. Like,
yeah, you're just gonna make a huge shift in the game and probably pull ahead really hard at that point. And speaking of pulling ahead, like we can talk about that top end that is just quite phenomenal with Ursula and Clarabelle. We were talking about it a few seconds
and
ago.
in that version, the Yzmas too. I've heard people talking about removing the your welcomes. I think. Well, we see a split of 2-2 here to put like some Yzmas in, and yeah, definitely buffing the top end even more.
Yeah, well, this is your only kind of removal except from challenging, so it's quite conditional. It's not what your deck does best. You're not in red, you're not in steel, you're not even in blue to have like super good ways to deal with characters and other game objects. But it's there and it's quite serviceable, and sometimes it creates super sweet play patterns with like just tucking back your rabbit into your deck and drawing three. That's nothing to scoff at.
Definitely not.
And again, we see here the Elsa, the fifth spirit, that I think you take a lot of advantage out of it because you have more creatures. You're able to develop more interesting boards. You don't even have to send the Elsa into your Diablo now that you have other evasive characters such as Sir Hiss. Uh, there are the deck runs really deep. I've seen games of it. Like I was playing inside events in Vegas, and I saw my friend play. My friend was on Ruby Amethyst, and he was playing against this deck in particular, and the game was like a nail biter. It ran so deep. It was like take for tack. It was just really back and forth. It was great Lorcana in my opinion. So it creates really interesting games, and like I I think we should see that deck a little more because people will pick up on the patterns of it. Like you have a lot of cool tools. Even the Bell Accomplished Mystic is quite the card. I like that card a lot. I tried it in like fringe lists of Amethyst Steel, and it does work. It does really remarkable play
Oh yeah,
patterns.
moving those damage counters can be pure removal sometimes.
Yep.
And I have to say, those two Lucifers in that specific list is something I was not expecting to see, but that I've been considering in like the past few weeks of why we haven't seen him back now that discard lists are back, and it's nice to see him rear its head one more time.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I've seen some green steel lists that are bringing him back, swapping some of their uninkables with that. Uh, Definitely not the Zan list, but one of my friends was building a list for one of the side events, and it was another person's green steel. I don't remember it was if it was Edmund Chu's version or something that was playing two Lucifers, and he was quite happy that I had my Lucifers with me in Vegas because I'm always traveling with like a big suitcase of cards, so I can like get everybody's back if people want to try some spicy stuff in the side
Your
events.
box of staples.
Yeah. I'm the Mary Poppins of Lorcana, quite in flavor.
also, also worth noting, like Lorcana, Ravensburger as a company has been pushing really hard in the design for Ruby Amethyst Challenge kind of focus, where the Amethyst cards tap down or exert the opponents, and then the Ruby cards have buffs for challenging and are able to like benefit from all that challenge. And funnily enough, it's here in the Emerald list that we see that kind of happening with Elsa, with Ursula, and then with the crabs and the Anna that are able to buff your small attackers. So it's fun to see that there is something of that component that Ravensburger has been trying to push, just not in the way they were expecting it to.
Yeah, well, we tried to do something about it in our budget list.
Yeah,
Our series. Well, I say our. It's more of your series of like Inklings adventure. You should see check it out. It's on the channel. It's mainly Nick with in a hat and a jacket and being really really enthusiastic about $17 decks, but like it's a lot of fun for people that are starting out the game or just trying to find more interesting ways than just playing the meta decks to shake things up. You know, so you should
thanks.
you should check it out if you have a bit of time.
Yeah, back on topic. From playing this deck, I can tell you that it is one that is really hard to pilot, and I never felt like there is a really good matchup that you're playing into. It's a tempo deck. You're always on the back foot. Uh, it's a hard one to pilot if I were to say so myself. So please enlighten me. What should I be playing this into?
Okay, so why you feel this way is like I said in the beginning. It's Ruby Amethyst's little brother, you know. And Ruby Amethyst is the I'm gonna use the magic term here is the Jund deck of Lurkana. So you're gonna be like 50-50 across the board with about everything. Everybody's gonna feel that they have a good-ish matchup of it or they have good techs against you, but you're still just gonna Jund them out and like do your mid-range stuff, garner a lot of value and just steamroll them this way. Uh, I feel that this is what this deck wants to be doing as well. I think
It
you
is, but it's lacking the hard removal, which the second you're on the back foot makes it really really hard to come back with this deck,
yeah,
in my opinion.
yep. So you really want to you really want to press the advantage early on, and you really have to know your lines against the different meta decks because like I said, it's probably about 50-50 across the board ish. It's maybe some points higher, lower against various stuff, but like you have you like your Lyle is not gonna be good against Ruby Sapphire, though it's gonna be really really great against Green Steel. Like you're gonna be able to just deny some card drawing with the Diablo. So I think I think probably you should look forward to some mirror pseudo mirror matches with Ruby Amethyst, which should not be that hard, given that your creatures, well, your characters, I mean, are just much better than theirs in general. I mean, generally the top end is just much better. And if you get to that late game where you're able to have an Ursula or a Clarabelle to just keep your hand high or just be able to deny any kind of board, well, you're going to be in a good spot. So I would say the good matchup would be the pseudo mirror. You're trying
Yeah,
to attack the mid range decks with your mid range deck.
I mean, plus the fact that between Mim, Goat, Bell, Yzma, Clarabelle, and Ursula, you have a lot of targets that are not hit by Madame Medusa, which
Hmm.
is not something that a lot of deck have in the meta. So
Yeah, I
you
think this
have
is
good insurance on your top hand against a lot of the red removal that's not be prepared.
yeah. Well, your deck scales really well with what Ruby Sapphire wants to be doing in general.
Yeah,
So this too shouldn't be too hard.
but I don't think we would recommend that you net deck this specific deck the day before going to your set champ and just pick up and play. That might not be the list for that.
No, I know that I would probably recommend it to people that are really like inveterated tempo ish players that will pick up easily on this. I know I have friends on the team that only play that even, and they don't even consider the team deck. They're just like, I'm gonna play my version of Emerald Amethyst, and that's gonna be it.
um, so
Okay.
now, Ember Steel, Steel Song, the deck
Oh,
that is the most, dare I say, controversial right now in how to build it and how to run it depending on your event.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and just say my opinion about it really quickly. Uh, I don't think it's a good time to be an Ember Steel player. I think the meta is really hostile for you. You're still gonna get some good wins against Ruby Amethyst. That is your good matchup, but you're gonna be really fighting tooth and nail with the Green Steel that is a pseudo mirror in a way because you have a lot of the same like removal suit and even some of the same like threat suit with Tinkerbell, with Robin and everything, and you're gonna have a horrendous time against Ruby Sapphire. Like I, this was my first consideration for Vegas, and I dropped it so early on in the game. I don't think I spent more than a week testing with Ember Steel. We all the team played Ember Steel in Toronto, and our list was I have to say some a really spicy one. We had those look at his family. We had a lot of silver bullets in there. Really loved how the deck was built for that metagame of the end of set four without Bucky, but now I feel that the deck is kind of struggling in finding his identity. You see here that the presence of Piglet.
I'll interrupt you there and
Okay,
say that I agree with you if you expect a meta that is really heavy in Ruby Sapphire, because that's the really bad matchup. But for everything else, I think that's a deck that's really versatile for the rest of the meta. Like you can be more aggressive by going with the daisies and the piglets. You can be more I guess I don't want to say controlly, but like you can up your count of World's Greatest Criminal Mind and Bare Necessities and try to snag those key pieces out of some of the decks the same way that Green Steel will play their Ursula to try to remove the songs. Like it's a deck that can generate a lot of value, and that whole new world, if there's no Diablo on the board, will crush Emerald Steel's legs by giving you the cards that they're so desperate to remove. So, like, if you don't expect a lot of Ruby Sapphire, I don't think the deck is as bad as its showing has been in Vegas.
yeah. Well, this was the point I wanted to get to by
Yeah,
analyzing the cards we have in the deck right now. The deck is super flexible. That is what it has going on for it. You see here the inclusion of three piglets that we didn't have. Well, we didn't play in set number four. Uh, you could decide to run some daisies, which are still a menace. Like people have found that Daisy has not been as good as promoted early on in the metagame, in the set five metagame. It probably just has a hard time finding a home. But I would say you have like you can vary on the number of Naveen's that is quite the powerhouse of just turboing out your whole new world. You have Pete, that's a new pickup from the new set. It's very good against the mirror match. It's very good against key actions such as be prepared. If you play it just before, if you anticipate the red player to be playing a be prepared on your full board, you're just delaying that by a whole turn and generally sometimes even winning out of this one. You can vary the number of grab your sword. Right now, I would be on some number of grab your sword against green steel, just and even lemon lime, because those decks tend to run quite a few ward characters.
Ward
So
not that big. Like, sure, the muses have four, but the Diablos, the Johns, a lot of stuff like the morphs. Like, if you can wipe all of that in one turn, you've pretty much settled it.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's what you need to just stay in the game. Right now, you don't have a way to do it on turn two like you used to with the
The
queen.
Queen.
But this is what our team has been heralding since the last set. The queen is just not that great of a card. It is very good at cheesing some cool plays, like a very early whole new world or a very early grab your sword, but it feels so bad to just be playing that 4-3 on turn 5 without shifting it. You just feel that you're losing a tremendous amount of tempo. That is why we don't see it a lot. I was When I was researching the list, I saw people trying to work it back in, but as like two ofs, three ofs. No one was on like full playsets of the queen nowadays.
Yeah. Also, worth noting, like, this deck is single handedly keeping the aggro decks at bay. So if you're in a meta where everyone is shifted away from Ember Steel, going into the slower decks, going into the discard decks, I would absolutely advise that you try going on with an hyper aggro list, because this is the only thing that keeps them at bay. That Steel Song with their grab your swords, with all of their suite of removal, kills aggro like nothing. But if it's not there,
So you have to keep people honest with aggression, and you have to keep aggression honest with this mid range.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Another thing I have to mention, this is really my personal note. There is a one of lantern in this deck. We see that it's kind of a placeholder. Uh, I've seen a lot of lists made by Brandy Candio, who's a friend of one of my teammates. Uh, the lists we were trying all had lantern. I just don't like that card at all. I feel it's just not great at doing the job it wants to be doing. Sometimes it will be timely on turn two, and you'll be able to like Naveen on turn three, singing a whole new world, but it doesn't happen quite that often, especially when you play a low number of it. Like here, it's a one of. I feel it could just be any other one uninkable, and it would do the trick.
I mean, I feel like even having a Pluto instead would be one cheaper and able to quest for one at the end of the game if that's all you draw into. Whereas if you draw into a lantern turn like 9, what are you gonna do with it?
Exactly. We're not gonna spoil you on the content that's coming up, because we have a video of Ember Steel shot up for you guys, and I remember playing those games against you, and every time I played a lantern, I lost. Every time I didn't see a lantern the whole game, I just was able to win, and I was like, why do I have to prove myself
There's
right
a
every
trend
time?
there.
Like, why do I have to prove myself right?
uh, and finally, we've been hinting at it the whole time. Your team's pet list for Vegas, Ember Emerald, as piloted by Kevin, making it to the top 8 in Vegas.
The Quebec special. So here, this list is, I think, is easily the most difficult thing to pilot that you will be given. This is not for the faint of heart. You have to be really, like, you have to get the crash course on what to do. The lines here are super difficult. Sometimes you have to anticipate like one, two, three turns ahead of what you want to be accomplishing. The mulligan discipline is super, super strict on this deck. I won't go into the details. Probably we're supposed to have Kevin soon on the channel to talk to us about Vegas and whatnot. And it will be just before Seattle. So if people are trying to get into the deck before Seattle, maybe he will give some expert tricks and some cheap coaching, as I like to call it, from YouTube videos. But yeah, you see here, I decided to pull out Kevin's list to showcase. You see some interesting choices. Sometimes people are just playing up with numbers and just that are not exactly the same as his. Like that one of Naveen. That one of
I was about
Naveen
to say, I'm surprised to see the Naveen there.
the Naveen is actually very, very, very good at doing his job. Sometimes it's just paired with the right cards, it will just do a lot of work. Sometimes it's just like, oh, it can replace itself with the one of Bjargas. Or it's just a 3/3 that is much larger than almost everything in the deck that makes the other player discard a card, as well as establishing good board presence paired with John is very good. Sometimes it sings. We don't talk about Bruno for some removal. It's just like the Swiss Army knife of the deck. It's good at doing almost everything paired with what you have in hand at that point. It never feels really bad to be slamming him with paired with any song because you'll get some value out of him. You'll get more than that 4 ink investment.
The downside of it, as you said, is that when a 3/3 is one of your larger bodies on the field, you're vulnerable to some removal if they manage to get to it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We weren't expecting when going into the tournament to play against many grab your sword and whatnot. And definitely Sisu was a big issue. The game plan against Ruby Sapphire is just not letting them get to Sisu, trying to just deny them any kind of resources. But I played the deck in a side event on Sunday in Vegas, and I've lived the dream of just utterly denying resources to my opponent. He conceded on turn, I think, 5 or 6. It was just such a brutal game because I was getting everything to be able to make him discard, to cherry pick out of his hand, and every top deck he was like on 4 ink with a quill, uh, and he was like he top decks in Maui. He cannot play it. He just put it in the inkwell. So goes to his turn 6, rips out the Madame Medusa, isn't able to play it, has to quill it, but right after quilling it, he's like, okay, I've had enough. Let's go to game two. You know, so this is probably like it's a deck you have to really high roll your opponent, but that's why I'm saying you have to be masterful with it because when you know how to play it really well, you will high roll people quite reliably with it. I know
Oh,
I
I know I was getting pretty tilted when we filmed the upcoming episode on this deck.
Yeah, because like I just leverage the preparation with the team, and like I was really 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 um like disciplined with my mulligan choices, and you're like, how do I deal with that? Because I was just it was either I was going for the Diablo line very reliably, and when I wasn't, I always had like the package of John with the 2-drop discarding. It was always like an uphill battle for any deck that we presented to it during that showcase.
Yep.
So if you like, I recommend if you want to be picking this deck up for later store championships or even for Seattle, check out our video that we will record with Kevin. We'll try to make him talk about the deck as much as possible to be a very insightful showcase of the deck. Also, our video, if we're able to release it about the deck, where you see the games, where you see how it shines against uh, Ruby Sapphire, because I remember we played a game of Ruby Sapphire, and it was not like short. There were spots where Ruby Sapphire was about to come back in the game, and we just like played to the till the last the last buzzer, and that's where the deck was able to win, and that's what will happen. It's not always a free win, as I was explaining with the turn 6 concession. Sometimes you have to play to your outs until the end. Your opponent will be able to be prepare you or to sisu you, and you have to just get back up and keep on playing the game.
And in closing remarks, now that we've seen like the top six decks that you expect to see, what are some of the fringe decks that you would be on the lookout for that might blindside a few people, the way that Ruby Steel blindsided some of the Vegas players?
All right. Well, the main contender for that kind of like outlier good deck list that might make his way to top eight quite easily in the regular meta. It's probably a hyper aggro deck in smaller fields as local fields. It's easier to leverage the the linear the linear aggro decks. Maybe it would be Ember Amethyst. Maybe it could be Emerald Ember. If you want to see a really interesting deck, go see the top 16 deck that one of our friends, Clara Cyr, piloted in Vegas. She ended up getting her qualification for continentals with it. The deck is quite interesting. Just make sure to probably just polish it a little bit, because we had this story that she was missing some cards at the beginning of the event that she would have liked having more copies of into the deck. But the
Also of note, I've seen a rise both locally and in discourse online of an Amethyst Steel aggro deck,
yeah
relying on Duck to refuel the hand and on the Resist Mickey from set 5 as a one drop to kind of provide the same defensive play that Daisy can provide without the downside, and rely on Chromicon a lot to draw like 2, 3 cards a turn. And that deck can definitely surprise you the first few times you play it.
yeah
Because it
that
plays bodyguards, it plays that extra card draw that benefits them, and it can close a game really fast with those gather knowledge and wisdoms and goats.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I was considering it like super, super, super late before Vegas. Like, I was like, is there a way to make that deck work? And I didn't have enough time to sit down and ponder over it. But I spoke with players over there locally that wanted to make it work and that tried it. The only like what do we've been able to just get as a conclusion out of it is it's very hard to close the game with that deck. You don't have any big haymakers. You have to rely very heavily on goat bounce and like you said, gather knowledge
And wisdom,
and
yeah.
wisdom. So because that's the thing. Sometimes you're just gonna fizzle out with like really small characters and whatnot. Uh, Maybe there's a list there that we haven't found yet that can go more on the mid-range side of the thing, because it has really, 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 really good lines. You can like Pete lock your opponent with
Hmm.
bouncing it with the mim package. It is very good. The only problem is the Pete is not very aggressive and the Mim package is not very aggressive. So you just quest for one every time with those. So you're not gonna do a whole lot of damage just trying to race with those.
Yeah.
And the last deck I want to talk about is as a consideration is Blurple. I always say if there's a set that Blurple is viable, it's now. Uh, I don't want to say it's like I've seen quite a few of them in the top lists while researching for the video. Uh, I've seen a few of them. It's not like oh they're everywhere and it's rising up, but I feel there are some like really interesting lists that are floating around and that get some good results. So check it out.
People have been trying to break it since the beginning of set 5, so there's bound to be some.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that you can if you find the right spot, the right niche for it to be able to crack the metagame, I think it is definitely able to do that. But you have to play it a lot, I think.
I'm just looking at it really fast. There is a list that made 98th place in Vegas of $63 Amethyst Steel aggro deck.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying the deck is not viable. I'm just
Oh no, I
saying,
know. I'm just surprised to see how well it fared in Vegas.
yeah, well,
I didn't see it.
like I said, there's something to that deck. That's why I was considering so late in the game, but I wasn't able to find a build I quite liked to be able to comfortably take up to such a big event as Vegas. But
Yeah.
check it out. All the lists from Vegas. I think it's very interesting. Like we said in the last episode, that the lists from Vegas are quite interesting as the American players always try to be on lookout for innovation. They're trying to really spice up their deck choice, and this is what will. This is the strength of the American players, and this is probably what will shine at Continentals. That's hopefully so.
Yeah. Also, just a quick word before we close on how does the format influence your deck decision? So we know some stores are running best of three, some stores are running best of two, like the big events. I know you have a very strong opinion on using best of two at local events, but how would you face the two in your deck choice? Would it affect your deck choice in any way?
Okay, quick sidebar, just so everyone knows what you're talking about. I'm always saying like best of two is the worst possible thing to run at local events. It's so easy for good players to just, as soon as round two and round three, manipulate the whole bracket. Basically, it just gives tremendous power to someone that went 2-0, 2-0, going to game three and being able to just drop the odd game to give a draw, to give some points to someone they want to see into top eight, or just really giving it their all to be able to lock out people of the top eight. I'm just saying, like, I don't like the format in really small fields. Even there's even problems showing in the large fields. So I won't go deeper than that in my explanation. But yes, definitely you should probably tweak your choice a bit, considering format. I would probably be less inclined to take up stuff like Ruby Sapphire. Like, more power to people that bring Ruby Sapphire to DLCs and to best of two tournaments, and same thing for Ruby Amethyst. I feel those decks are just 1-1 machines. They really want to be leveraging that third game, but and even like Green Steel sometimes needs that third game to pull ahead. Like I've been fortunate enough in Atlanta to be able to pull ahead and to net that top 64 with Green Steel with that last round win. But even there, it's quite brutal to just go for a lot of draws. I know I have a teammate that in Vegas started the day 0-0-6. 0-0-6. You haven't lost, you haven't won, but you're out. So it's just quite
Yep.
hard. It's just quite heartbreaking how that system works. So you don't want to pick decks that are very very strong on the play or on the draw. But I'm not gonna get into all of that. I've just read a tweet from Brennan DeCandio that I loved and I reposted immediately, uh, saying, and it's a very controversial. I don't want to offend anybody saying that. I know some people got a little flustered when he posted that, but he said the play draw, the the better a player you are, the least you care about the play draw disparity.
I mean, Vegas definitely showed that all the top 16, I think, were not people who were in the top brackets day one. So they started all of those best of three playing second, and they made up the top of the bracket at the end of the day. So they definitely showed that that disparity can be overcome.
Yeah, I think it was a problem probably at the beginning of the game. It was a problem with Pixelborn. I've heard like voodoo stories about flaws in the algorithm when you were on the play that made your hand better or something. But I think that time has passed. It's fine that they tried to coin a format for us. I don't want to start a debate right now, but I think that time has passed. Maybe next year they should bring back just like best of three as we do in other card games, because we're the only card game playing best of two as it is right now.
Yeah. Well, I know for sure. I kind of have my idea for now what I'm going to be playing, at least starting the weekend. We'll see when we face each other on Sunday, but hopefully you have yours too, and hopefully our viewers are now a little more informed on what to expect and what to play on those events.
Spoiler alert.
And
Spoiler alert, I have no clue what I'm bringing on Sunday. It's just that I have someone that I've been coaching for Seattle that I'm quite debating if I'm playing the deck he wants to be bringing to Seattle to see if I can give him some insight, or if I'm playing just for fun and playing my kind of list. So we'll see what I bring on Sunday. I'll make sure to give you at least a bit of a heads up so you're not too taken aback.
oh, I mean, I'll be cool with it regardless. I know for Saturday I have a much better read on what I expect the meta to be over there, so I was able to make an informed choice, and that's what you all should do as well. Think of the people you expect to be playing. Think of the decks you expect them to play, and choose a list that you're comfortable with. Like, don't net deck a new deck the night before. Don't make wild changes to your deck the night before. And yeah, take something that will likely play favorably in the field you're expecting. It doesn't matter that Vegas is all blue red and that Birmingham was all blue red as well. If your local meta is playing only hyper aggro, don't play blue red.
Yeah, you have
so
you have to have these things into consideration always, always.
yeah, your local meta is not the global meta, and this is to me the most important thing to remember when preparing for set champs.
Exactly.
So thanks for staying with us until now, an hour and 10 minutes later. Uh, if you do participate in your set championships afterwards, let us know. Like which list did you bring? How did you fare? We want
Leave
to
a
see your
comment.
results. We want to see people like getting those Mirabels. So drop it in the comments. Let us know how it went, and we'll see you with gameplay hopefully fairly soon. We do have a few of those lined up.
Yep. And as always, we're gonna invite you to keep
Keep
questing.
questing.